without further ado, we've got Evan McGee, CTO of SignalWire, to talk to you about a little something Web3-y, a little something different.
Oh yes, very exciting.
A little something special.
A little something special.
So without further ado, Evan McGee.
Thank you. Thanks, Ev. Thank you. Hope everybody's having a lovely morning. So this talk is a little bit different, right? I know a lot of the talks we do here at ClueCon are very technical and go through a lot of detail. We've seen some amazing ones so far. Everyone in the room here is a very technical person, I know that. What I'm excited about here is this talk's a little more high level. And if this inspires anything in you to come talk to us later, if you have ideas or ways that we can work together or ways that this stimulates something, come find me, come find anybody that we work with, come find Evan, come find anyone. We'll talk more about these ideas because I feel like what I'm about to talk about, social economies, Web3 things, is more of a forward-facing motion and something that we can all provide value to. So really, the title of this talk is a little bit, my wife helped me, she's a journalist. She was like, make a title that's punchy. We've been trying to punch up titles. She's like, WebRTC is the unquenchable fuel of Web3. Like, it's the most clickbaity title we could possibly come up with when we were sitting on the couch. But who am I? So I am Evan McGee. I'm the CTO, one of the co-founders over here at SignalWire. There's all of my different social media things. You can come find them. Feel free to follow me, do whatever else you want, but I don't post that much because I'd rather talk to you guys in person, to be honest. So what is Web3, right? We hear this, it's a buzzword, right? We hear it a lot. Web3, what are we talking about, right? Even Elon got it. Has anyone, right? Has anyone seen it? You can't find it. What does it mean? Who here actually thinks they know what Web3 means? Just give me a show of hands. Who thinks they know what a Web3 thing is? Yeah, exactly. We got Len in the back. Len knows what it is, but other than Len, nobody here has any idea because it's not really a well-defined term. There's a couple of different things. Web3 is not Web 3.0. It can be. People conflate them. They can be the same, but frequently they're not. Web 3.0 is what Tim Berners-Lee would describe as the semantic web, right? That's his vision of what the actual internet turns into, whereas Web 3 is more about distributed social economies and token economies. So when we get into this, right, Web 1, Web 2, and what is Web 3.0? So this was the beginning, right? He started out with just static HTML pages. If you were alive back then, which some of us were here and some of us were not, back in the 90s when things were just, just blinking tags in HTML and things like that. Then we had Web 2, and Web 2 was the one that everyone coins like Facebook, interactive sites, things like that. And Web 3.0 basically is the idea that we're moving beyond just people being able to read, write on the web into machines being able to talk to each other. A lot of it, the way we would talk about it, is just like metadata tags, right? Everything is tagged metadata-wise so that any link or object can be machine readable so that things can talk to each other. You can scrape things, you can parse things much more than you can today. Sorry, my mic is popping a little bit. I'm trying to move it away. So that's the future of it, right? That's the exciting part of the semantic web. And that just simply means that all the machines can talk to each other, human readable, machine readable, allows things to happen autonomously in the background. Web 3.0, so there's another little graphic about it, right? Read only, sort of static, read-write interactive, and then read-write trust verifiable. The trust verifiable is an important part of the last portion of this, which is that, as we know, the internet was built to be decentralized but also anonymous in a lot of ways. And that's caused a lot of problems. It's both amazing and also an issue. So in the future, having some sort of digital signature that we can pass around, you can verify both ownership of, say, let's say, like an NFT, which I'll talk about, or the trusted source authority of some kind of information. So the idea of building trust into an untrusted system, it's something that was missing from day one and that they kind of need to work in right now. Whereas the Web 1, 2, and 3 are a little bit different, right? This is sort of, it says, Web 1 and Web 2, because the Web 3 term is kind of amorphous, but really it's about going from an information economy, sort of, again, that sort of read system, to a platform economy where you go to like Facebook or Dropbox or things like that, or DocuSign, to sort of a token-based, decentralized, distributed thing, where the trust and verifiableness is enforced by the underlying systems. And that's a really, really interesting differentiation from the way we currently do things. Right now you have to trust a bank, or you got to trust Okta, or somebody like that, to actually know who you are and pass that information along. In the Web3 model, your trust is inherent in the actual underlying systems, so you can present yourself as yourself, and everybody here can identify who you are. You know who I am because you can see my face. You know, on the internet, nobody knows you're a dog. So like, you know, you can tell, like, no, I'm a golden retriever. I live in Santa Monica and I like the beach. So like that, you know, how do you identify who you are? It's also about decentralization, right? That's a big part of it. Up until now, we've had a lot of, you know, these kind of networks, right? Started out a lot of centralized systems. The internet, as we all know, was built to be decentralized. That was the whole point of the ARPANET. The whole point was to withstand some sort of nuclear attack so that you could always route traffic around. So it was originally built to be sort of a decentralized system. So you have these three sort of main network types: centralized, decentralized, and distributed. If anyone here has played with WebRTC or knows about it, you're going to recognize this exact same topology, right? This looks a little familiar, right? So you have mesh P2P, you have MCU and SFU topologies. But if we go back for a second, right, this is the exact same sort of system. We also, if you know here, if you played with any of these systems before, you sort of understand that a mesh or a distributed system can be very, very noisy and chattery. So centralized, we know that's an issue because that's what we currently have now with a lot of sources, right? All information is centralized. You sort of decentralize, which is a little bit better, and then you have distributed. Distributed, again, can be kind of difficult. If we go back to the WebRTC thing, who here is sort of you raise your hand if you're aware of like the problems with a mesh topology? Anyone? Okay, good. Then I'll kind of explain it. So the issue with the mesh topologies, you can see here, the number of connections doesn't scale well. So you see that like every person has to connect to every other person. So as you get up to 1, 2, 3 people, not a problem. Everyone connects to everybody else. If you have 50 people, you have 50 connections from each person. So the algorithm does not scale past a certain amount. And each person, let's say you're sending WebRTC traffic, you are actually sending video, decoding video from 50 people. You can't really do that. SFU is a bit better, right? Centralizes, forwards the packets around. That's a selective forwarding unit. So in WebRTC language, that means videos come into a central place and they go out again. So you're sending one outbound stream and you're receiving inbound streams from everybody else. Better, still a problem in some scenarios because again, you're receiving up to N number of videos and those videos have to be decoded by whatever device you're on. Whether it's a laptop, not a problem. But let's say you have an Android handset that was given to you by, your grandma because you're 7 or whatever, and a 7-year-old shouldn't have phones. But anyway, you have, and you can't, it can't decode that many videos at once. You're trying to play Roblox with all your friends, and I know this for a fact because I've seen my son do it, and it doesn't work. So then you have an MCU one. MCU, again, is sort of a more centralized model in that way, where all the videos come in as one feed, and you get one out. So it's one in, one out. So it gives you some benefits. The offset of that is that you do all of the server-side encoding and decoding. So there's trade-offs to each one of these, but the mesh one in particular doesn't scale very well. And that's been a real interesting part of WebRTC from the very beginning, because it was pitched as sort of a P2P protocol, and a lot of the data channels can do that. But the video in that case is only useful in very certain scenarios. But it's attractive because you can just go person to person and can be very secure, versus having to do end-to-end encryption in the other ways. But it's not really about, Web3 is not really about decentralization. That's one part of it. It's really about building up communities. The whole point is like, why was this technology invented? Like, why are we doing anything with communications in general? Because it's about community, right? So the communities you form when you do these sorts of Web3 organizations. A token-based economy only functions when people are using or spending these tokens or doing whatever else they want to do. So you have things like DAOs, right? Again, another show of hands. I feel like this is great because only like 2 people are actually raising their hands. Who knows what a DAO is? Okay. All right, we got 4 people. Terrific. So they are distributed autonomous organizations. Basically, they are groups of people that have come together and they enforce rules of a network based on smart contracts. Smart contracts being the basically programmatic underpinnings of things like Ethereum and stuff like that, right? You say, if everybody votes, everyone who has a token can vote on something. Let's say we're like, a good example actually is one of these was a crypto token recently where it was a bunch of like weird sort of manipulations of the market. There was a whale who was holding a lot of like this thing to the side, and they're like, if this guy liquidates, we're going to actually the thing will be underwater, margin calls will happen, and people get wiped out. So the DAO of that organization voted to basically take that guy's money away from him and force him to sell on like a private internal market. What was interesting was that it is enforced by the voting of the members. Voting is done by who holds the most tokens in an organization. So it's a very interesting model. It also can be swayed though. If you own, 90% of a thing, I mean, this is why, and I won't get into the politics of this, but it's why the Electoral College, which was originally founded, right, was that, they didn't want New York City taking over and dictating what happens in Wyoming. So they wanted to sort of even out the playing field. Well, we're back to that again, where anyone who owns all the tokens can kind of sort of dictate what goes on to a certain extent. And so there's lots of ideas of how do we do that. How do you manage these sort of organizations and communities? But again, a lot of this is about voting and people taking ownership and part of the community. And at the end of the day, all these tokens, all these things are generally about monetization, right? A lot of this ends up being about how do we spend money? How do we get money? How do people live their lives and do their jobs? And so what Web3 really does is sort of enables these sort of social economies, right? People are now able to come together in brand new ways to form organizations that forward the benefits that they want. Maybe it's you're an animal rights activist. Maybe it is simply that you want to, just make more money for money's sake. I'm not here to say, what's right or wrong. It allows people around the world to find a common interest and then form organizations and communities around it. And it's not just groups of people like that. It's people like content creators and influencers, whole new job archetypes that existed when we were younger, but now are something that is actually like a career people follow. And living in LA, this is something I actually talk to people a lot about, people who work in this kind of thing. And so it's really interesting, right? You have things like NFTs, content creators, social communities. Excuse me. So who here knows, so again, more hands. Who here has heard of NFTs? You ever heard of NFTs? Great, everyone's heard of it. Who here has actually bought an NFT? Yeah, no, you got, all right, we got one back there. Luca's got like 35 of them, I think. Anyway, NFTs are non-fungible tokens, right? Really all they are is digital, it's the ownership of a digital asset or something else. This is one of the Bored Apes. These things sell for about, I don't know. Yeah, what are they at now? Like $50,000? They were $50,000. Wow, that picture costs 50 grand. And you can own it, and I put it in here, and I can do whatever I want with it, and you can do whatever you want with it. The whole point is I don't own that image. Somebody out there actually owns that. And to people who that matters to, it's worth $50,000. And that's the whole point of the sort of NFT market, is that it's ownership of an asset. It is something that someone created, you pay for it, and it really is almost like art curation, right? You're owning something, particularly on the digital side. It can be like your avatar. Like anything else, I can have a reproduction of a Picasso in my house, and everyone will be like, "Oh, it's an amazing art. Is that a real Picasso?" And it's like, no, it's like literally done by a guy, line for line, perfect. But it's not a real Picasso. So same thing, right? These are I can copy the image into this talk, but it's not my image; it's their image, and that matters to a lot of people. I created this, so this is a. I created a few NFTs for this talk. I was going to put them on OpenSea so you can purchase them with all the proceeds going to charity. I'll probably do that after the talk is done. Didn't quite get that finished. But that over there is I typed into Stable Diffusion. What did I put in there? It was like saguaro cactuses at a bar. And that's what it generated, right? And I was like, oh, great. So like using sort of the AI, sort of things like that. Stable Diffusion, by the way, is one of these AI art generation tools. It's a lot of fun. But I was like, how do you create unique pieces of art that people might want to purchase? You throw it up there, anyone can buy it. It's a really interesting way that artists and people can actually now monetize their own value. I mean, in the past, imagine you're an animator. This is a story I have from Los Angeles. I have a bunch of friends who work in like YouTube comedy videos, things like that. They were animators for the longest time. They worked in animation, and then YouTube and Google at one point changed their algorithm so they were no longer monetized based on viewership, but on sort of length of view. As soon as that did it, it just killed all animation on YouTube, because you can't make animation that lasts an hour and a half, right? It has to last 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Might get viewed 1 million times, but it's not long enough. So they all switched into, that's why you've seen this profusion or proliferation of gaming, like people just chatting while they do games, that kind of stuff, because it keeps you engaged for a long period of time. But those animators were always very sad, because that's what they really wanted to do. That was their passion, was creating that art. And so the idea that they can now use things like NFTs to create this sort of thing, you can own the animation, you can own they can cut it up into individual frames. My wife, as a journalist, has always said, you can always sell this. As a journalist, one of the things, if you're freelance, is you want to sell the same story 3 separate times, because you do a lot of work investigating, writing the story. You want to get 3 different angles on it. Artists are the same way. They want to create one image or one thing and then be able to resell that a bunch of times because it takes so much effort to do it. And so NFTs are one way to do that, which is a very exciting opportunity for them. And those people are the content creators. Whoops. Yeah, they are the content creators, right? And so when you say content creators, it kind of has like kind of a negative ring to it sometimes. Like, content creators, kids these days. But like these people work so incredibly hard. They are out there just busting their asses every day trying to put stuff out there. Is all of it great? No. Is all the code I've written great? Yes. But that's they try their best. And they are really, really working to give people what they want. And they have communities. These communities might be 10,000 people, 20,000 people. This happens a lot where they're small, but they're tight. And then they feel like they're connected to the actual person. And this, again, I'm going to circle back to WebRTC here, I do promise. What that means is people want to interact. They want to make sure that they're connected to their audience and to their fan base. They need to find ways to do that. They need to be in charge of the narrative because that connection is what finances their life and how they make their living. And that is a social community, right? All of these pictures, by the way, I made with Stable Diffusion. I think that I was like a guy laughing at a microphone, which is why his jaw's a little more funky. But these are all artificially created images. Again, social communities, they need to start small. They may start like 1 to 10 people. You start a Twitch stream and you're an amazing DJ from the UK and you get a couple followers, 20 followers, 100, 1,000, 10,000 followers. It's really, that you need something that's going to scale here. And all of these communities need some sort of form of communication. So that's why I think, and I would make the argument that WebRTC is the fuel for that social engagement. There is no other technology that currently exists today that allows the scale to go from like one person to 1 million people in order to engage those communities, in order to like talk to people, right? Right now, the state of, and this is something we talked about earlier, you have a couple different styles here. I'm gonna come back to that one. Right now, the standard is chat and sort of like one-way video, right? This is something that everyone uses today. You're on Twitch, you're watching somebody, you're chatting with them a little bit, you're typing, and the feed is scrolling by at 1 million things an hour. But that's it. This is the only way you can talk to people, right? That's not enough going forward. That's not enough to keep people engaged. And you want to make sure that they feel a connection, particularly if it's your livelihood that's depending on this. So one way is to do that. WebRTC allows for that sort of global real-time engagement, right? Texting does not make it interactive. You need to be able to scale from a single person to hundreds of thousands of people potentially who want to watch you or do something. This goes for anything from individuals to senators to anything you want to talk about. And you need to basically go from also being a passive participant in something where I'm just sort of I'm not whatever, and then maybe you have a great question. I would love if like the cast of The Next Generation were to have some sort of like, if I was watching some sort of broadcast with, Dr. Beverly Crusher, and I was like, I gotta ask you a question, and I could be pulled out of the audience to ask a specific question to Gates McFadden, I would be thrilled to do that. And if there were a platform that offered that, I would be so excited to jump into it. Excuse me. Water? Yeah, there's water over there. So that's kind of one of the things we want to do. This is a good example of, actually there's water right here. I found it. It's in the podium. It's in the other podium. This is a good example of Manningcast. So who here is a big football fan? Anybody? American football? Not yet. A bunch of Europeans. All right, American football. Anybody? How? We gotta get more people out into the world here. So yeah, football, right? These are the Manning brothers. You don't know who they are? They're quarterbacks. I think you know who Snoop Dogg is. Okay, one last raise of hands. Who knows who Snoop Dogg is? There we go, nailed it. All right, so these guys have this thing, right? They just basically it's just commentary on the game going, and it's pretty funny. Like they're obviously experts at what's going on. And they have someone call in. But look how basic this is. Like this is state of the art for what they do. And these guys have millions of people watching this all the time. The Manning brothers are amazing at this. But this is all you get. This is still like 90s style broadcast technology. If you want to move that forward, look at what you could do if you could bring people in, right? If they had somebody who they could actually bring into the Manningcast with them, whether it's not just Snoop Dogg popping in. What if somebody has a really good insight and they're like, hey, Tim from Ohio, jump in here for 10 seconds. How much is that worth in terms of the social performance and engagement with those brothers. They might not need it, but people do who are sort of a lower tier than that. There's such an opportunity here for these people to engage with each other. And so, one of the things is that the current technology that's out there using HLS or RTMP, the issue with that is that, right, you have the delay. You have about a 20, 30 second, even in LLHLS, you're talking 2 to 5 seconds. But 2 to 5 seconds plus the ability to talk to somebody, plus maybe a moderator who's like, hey, we want you to chat with somebody, you lose the thread. If I ask for a raise of hands or if I ask a question and no one answers, it's like, how much time do you have before the conversation has to move on? And the real answer there is only a few seconds, 3 to 5 seconds. You don't want to have to wait 30, 20 seconds to get somebody into a conversation. It has to happen lightning fast. It has to feel like it's just they're part of the experience. And that's where WebRTC comes in right now, right? It's the only thing we're going to have for the next bunch of years because it is so standardized now. We finally have hit the point in WebRTC where it's in pretty much everything, right? It's everything from Roku's all the way through every handset you have, every browser you use, and it works. I think if you have seen a previous talk by, I think Dan Jenkins gave a talk recently about why WebRTC kind of sucks, and he's right. It does in a lot of ways, but it actually is amazing in a lot of ways. And it is amazing because and he mentions this as well, that it is amazing because it is now in everything. We've been waiting forever. Tony knew this 10 years ago. We all saw this coming, where it would be in everything, and it's taken longer than we thought, but we're now have arrived at the point where you can put WebRTC anywhere you want to be. And if WebRTC is everywhere that it is, that means it can be everywhere that your audience is. And that's the critical part here, right? WebRTC gives you these things that HLS and RTMP do not give you, right? Active two-way communications. You have sub-second latency around the globe, right? You're just sort of limited a lot of the time by the speed of light or the fiber connections. It's built into everything. And what that gives you is that depth and breadth of engagement. And that is what everybody is looking for. These people, they need the idea that they are everywhere that their community is and their fans are, and that they can engage them at any level they want. Maybe they're holding back, maybe it's just surface talking to them, but a lot of it is reaching out to people. Maybe they pay for a VIP experience. Maybe they just, are there. They've been around and talking to people for, a year. They celebrate, hey, thanks for being a follower for a year. Those are the little things that keep people engaged, right? And that keep their entire lives moving. So I think that if you take away one thing from this talk, what I'm trying to get across is the idea that WebRTC and this sort of Web3 community are coming together in a way that allows new opportunities to arise. And that as you go out and work in different fields and do whatever you're working on, that think about that next phase of communication and evolution, right? If you're just doing audio right now, is video in the future? If you're doing messaging now, how do all these things work together to help the people and the communities that you work with communicate better and facilitate that? And if you have any questions about that or you want to talk more about it, just come find me. I would love to chat more about this kind of stuff. I think it's very fascinating, the future of it. Again, thank you all so much. Really appreciate it. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Amazing. Do we have any questions for Evan McGee or any offers to purchase any of those slides as NFTs? They're hot on the market now. You can get them.
Yeah, exactly. Go on OpenSea in about 20 minutes.
Do I have $1? Do we got $1, $2? $2. No whammy, no whammy? Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well then, if there are no actual questions as opposed to offers to purchase, let's give Evan McGee a round of applause.
Thank you all so much.